When you want to answer the question really well, should you start your introduction with using the words of the question, or should you end your introduction using words of the question? In my experience, it makes a huge difference to start with the words of the question in the introduction rather than wait till the end of the introduction. A couple of reasons. The first one is they need to see that you're answering the question given. And when you are going to have your paper in front of a marker that's probably got hundreds of papers to mark, you need to make it as easy as possible for them to see that you've engaged with a set question, because markers just need to basically figure out whether or not you've actually answered the question given, understood the material, or you've just gone in with a prepared response. And if you don't use the words of the question throughout the introduction until the end of the introduction, it could seem like you've just gone in with something memorized and then you're sort of just like chucking the question or the words of the question on at the end of the introduction. The other reason I think it's really helpful to start your introduction with the question is that you're then already in your mind thinking about how your whole answer is going to be linking to the question, rather than, again, just going in and writing something you prepared and then going, oh, whoops, like forgot to use the words of the question. Let me just jam this on the end. Okay, so my advice is, don't parrot the question. You don't want to just repeat the words of repeat the question in the first sentence of the introduction, then go into your own answer. And I think a lot of teachers see that. I see that in a lot of papers as well. And that's not the way to go about it. Because if you just repeat or rewrite the words of the question, rather than being a question, you write it as a statement and then you just go into your own thing, that's not answering the question either. So I think because a lot of people do that, teachers sort of can sometimes recommend that you don't use words of the question straight away, but what they really mean is that they don't want you repeating the question and then not really engaging in it. So maybe they sort of think if you sort of have a couple of ideas, or start your introduction and then bring the question in, you might tie it in a little bit better. But here's the way to do it so that it's really good, answers the question straight away, and it's also not parroting the question. You want to start with words of the question, but then make it your own sentence. Always make sure you add things into that first sentence of your introduction based on your knowledge and understanding of the text and how you're going to be going about answering that actual essay question. So, maybe you might take a phrase or like a couple of words, or let's say the question starts with storytelling. Maybe storytelling is the first word of your introduction, but then you go in to actually say who the storyteller is, what they've created a story about, and why. And then in that way, you're incorporating the words of the question. You're doing it straight away. So the marker knows, tick, okay, yep, I've seen the words of the question. That they're trained to look for those words. Okay, it's sort of like scanning. Oh, there's a question. There's a word of the question. Okay, so you've got to sort of write as well to meet the psychology of the person who's actually marking it. The easier you make it for them to see that you've really engaged with the question, the better. Obviously, they're then also looking for meaningful connections. They're not just wanting to see the words. They want to see you use it in a way that really shows your understanding. It's not just like kind of repeated and chucked in, arbitrarily without really seeing, or like having it mean something in your actual sentence. Okay. So my advice, start your introduction using the words of the question. Don't parrot the question, make it your own sentence, kind of like when you're integrating quotes into a sentence, but you don't need to quote it. You can if you want to, but you can just really use the words, incorporate them, and make them your own sentences. And ideally, you should have it in your whole introduction. So what I like best is those really long, meaty questions where you can maybe start your introduction with, a couple of the words in your first sentence, make it into your own sentence, obviously, like I said. Then the next sentence, you start with some words of the question, make it into your own sentence, and so on and so forth. So if you've got and it doesn't always have to be the beginning, maybe you have the words at the beginning in the first sentence, and then in the second sentence, you've got it like halfway through. It doesn't matter, as long as they're in there and it really like makes sense and you've shown a real solid understanding of what you're talking about, as opposed to just, here's my prepared sentence, and then I've just like shoved the words in, but it doesn't really work. It doesn't really make sense. So when you're doing your practice, what you should be doing is highlighting where you've used the words of the question when you have actually finished the response, and then actually read it aloud and see if it makes sense to you. If it's not making sense to you, it's not going to make sense for a marker. So in order to get the top band, you really need to make sure that you use the words of the question, use them straight away, use them consistently, and make them your own words. Integrate them into your sentences in a way that really shows an understanding of not only what the words mean, but how they connect to the actual argument that you have. Then topic sentences, really important to have the words of the question in every single topic sentence. the first topic sentence is going to be the one the markers read the most closely. And I would say markers decide about 80% of your marks based on your introduction, your first topic sentence. So make those really good. Okay. Not to say that you should just, throw in the towel for the rest of it, but they will be more likely to skim through the rest. So, make sure that the parts they're going to read really closely are done extremely well, and that the words are, integrated seamlessly into what your actual argument is.